happens if only one of the partners is actually praying for divine truth and trying to work through their emotions and the other's not?
So let's say the guy comes home, right, and he says those things to you, and you get really start to feel really upset, right? And you say, don't you think there's something in that, like you're starting to feel your emotions and you're starting to own it, but you're also saying to him, don't you feel there's something in that? And he's saying, no, I'm fine with that. Let's go to bed, right? Now, if the lady was in her emotional truth, she would still allow herself to go through that process of connecting to the causal emotion that caused this attraction. Now, not only of a man who spreads his sexual energy, but now she's also got a man who's callous about it. So she's got two different emotions now that she's being confronted with. Now, if she allows herself to experience those emotions, right, in the end, she can release the causal emotions within herself, right, that she feels to make her feel upset about it. And she can get to a point, actually, where she can actually look at the person with love and make a choice. Does she want to stay with a man? And it won't be based on anger. Understand? It won't be based on anger or resentment or any of the other emotions. It will just be based on love. Do I want to be with a man who's willing to project his sexual energy to others, or am I willing to be patient and see whether he works through that particular emotion sometime over the coming months?
But when the woman works through her emotion and gets to that point, does that have a positive effect on the partner?
Certainly. Do you think her crying and dealing with causal emotions in herself, when she's not blaming him, she's actually dealing with all the emotions inside of herself about her child, do you think that, of course, is going to have an effect on him? He's going to come home a lot of nights seeing her crying, but what's he going to do? One or two things.
Walk back out.
He's going to get angry, isn't he? Or upset with her. Or he's going to what?
Say, what's wrong, what can we do?
Exactly. He will look at himself more closely. One of those two things, won't he?
What happens if he says, for goodness sake, get a grip on yourself, I'm sick of you crying and feeling your emotions?
So is he being loving to you?
No.
No? So why are you choosing to stay in a relationship now that's unloving to you? See, that's another emotion, isn't it? So you need to deal with that emotion. You've come face to face with the fact now that your husband or partner, not only is he looking at other women and giving sexual energy to them, but now he's really callous with you as well. That's what he's telling you. And why aren't you willing to face up to that?
So you say, why are you being like that to me? That's all about.
No, you see, it's not about me asking him why he's being like that. Not at all. What it's about is acknowledging he is like that. Acknowledge the truth. He is like that. He is treating you badly. Don't go down the why. You go down the why, it makes you totally powerless, to be honest. Honestly. You think about it. Every time you go down the why, what do? You start to hope that he's going to somehow connect to something, don't you? Right? And what happens then? It is what it is. Right now, it is what it is. You need to either be in a state of enough love to deal with that, or leave.
With love.
With love. Either way. Deal with your emotions first.
Yeah.
Have a big cry and do all of that stuff. And if he doesn't let you cry, you'll need to leave so that you can cry. Let yourself deal with the causal emotions of the attraction. Really deal with it. You see, a lot of times what happens in our lives, the reason why we don't allow ourselves to deal with our causal emotions is because we know that if we deal with them, we're going to change our life. And we're afraid of changing our life sometimes, right?
It generally happens around the same time. So you're looking at change and looking at difference and looking at acceptance, all that within yourself, as well as they are good things, as well as trying to work through the other things. So
that's right.
It's really, really tough.
It is tough. It is tough. So I'm not saying that it's easy, but it is simple. Because there's only three things we need to do it. But it's simple to understand, but it's not easy.
Oh, well, I'm just learning that I've spent about 2 years. I used to get very angry and thinking that that's not the way to deal with things. So this new age thing of you send them love and don't get angry at all I've done. I'm getting all these emotions that are coming up here.
Because you can feel while we're talking about it,
twirling around inside me, because instead of dealing with the emotion, I've actually squashed it more, and I'm wondering why, because I've been sending all this love and whatever, that I'm still attracting even more.
That's right. See, this is the problem with this New Age philosophy, is that you will keep attracting more of the same while you're not dealing with the causal emotion. It's actually the dealing of the causal emotion that changes everything. And it's not sending, this idea of sending more love is a fictitious state too, by the way. What am I feeling inside if I'm feeling angry? Is it love? No. Not at that moment, is it? It's angry. I'm angry. And I'm covering over some fears and all that kind of stuff inside myself. I need to feel them. That's the real thing I need to do. Not send them love. Feel what I'm feeling. If I feel what I'm feeling, I'm actually being love right at that moment. Right? And you don't have to send anything then. You're owning it yourself. Now, in owning it, I'm not saying your life might not change, because it certainly will change. Any relationships that are unloving towards you, you will eventually leave. Right? You will. You will automatically leave. So with myself and Mary, at the moment I leave Mary every week, around about. Because at times the relationship is not loving. And at those times I leave. And I tell her I'm going to come back when it's loving. Right? And over the last four or 5 weeks, Mary's been very loving in owning all of her emotion now, and owning all of how she feels. And as a result of that, there's a much stronger attraction, because both of us owning our emotions is very powerful. Both of us owning our truth is very powerful. Yeah. So I'm not saying that any time you leave a partner it's going to be permanent. If it's permanent and you're doing it out of anger, is it love? No. So you've got more to work on there, right? If you're doing it because you're just so frustrated. Let yourself feel the causal emotions come up. Let yourself feel those and experience those. As you experience those, what will happen is everything around you will begin changing. And it will all change for the better if I'm dealing with the causal emotion.
What happens when those emotions are really deep-seated?
It's the same as if they surface. Usually if they're deep-seated, we need to look at our fears that cover it over. And there's a discussion that I did a few weeks ago about fear being your friend. And fear is a great way to access your underlying emotions. Because if you notice what your fears are, then you'll see why you block your emotion. Right? So let's say I'm in a relationship as a woman, and I've not had a work job now for 20 years because I've had 4 children and brought up the children, but my husband's been off working, so I've not had a job for 20 years. And I'm really, I'm now dealing with some causal emotion with my husband, right? And it's bringing up lots of things, and I'm starting to realise actually that my husband doesn't really love me. So I've got to the point now where I realise that. What fears do you reckon might start coming up in that scenario?
Well, if you left, you'd have to find a job. You'd have to have somewhere.
How am I going to support myself?
Yeah.
That's a fear.
Where am I going to go and live?
Where am I going to live?
Rental properties.
Yeah, I've never done that for 15 years or whatever. How
Can't
do I
go
sort
home
that
to
out?
mum and dad.
No, because they're probably passed by now.
Yeah.
Right?
Education training.
Yeah, what my whole life's going to change now. Can you see that? What are my fears that are being brought up? Now, if I live in those fears, I'm not going to leave.
No.
If I live in a state of truth, I will have to leave. But if I love myself, I will have to leave. Right? And I'd be willing to experience every emotion of finding a new job, willing to experience every emotion of, every single one of those things that I'm afraid of. I'll experience. And do you think in the end you're going to be a much better person? Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Feel empowered.
Yeah, and it's not about woman power or man power or anything like that. It's about you just feeling connected with yourself so much now that you know you don't actually need another person. So relationships are not about needing another person. Relationships are completely about desiring the other person. Do you understand the difference? If I need the other person, I have an emotional injury within me.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
If I desire the other person to give love, then I'm just in the state of giving love to that person, and that's the person I want to give love to. relationships in the end are going to be, for all of you, at some point in your future, whether here or in the spirit world, are going to be just about what you can give to the other person. It won't be about what you get. Because you'll be in such a good state yourself that you don't feel like you need anything.
That makes you more attractive as well.
Exactly. Yeah, so instead of projecting a neediness onto the other person, what you're doing is just giving to the other person, and the other person now also has the choice they can make as well. Do they want to give, or do they desire to give in return or not? And that's what a relationship in the end is all about. But the problem is that many of us have these emotional injuries that if the other person doesn't need me, then what's going to keep him with me? Or if she doesn't need me, what's going to keep her with me? And so you see a lot of relationships being created where if the woman doesn't need something from the guy feels very insecure, or vice versa. Right? And the truth is, in the future, you will stay in your relationships just because you desire. Just because you desire that person. No one else, that person. And it's a beautiful state to be in.